Awesome, awesome. All right, well, thank you guys for coming. Thank you, panelists, for joining us for this. This is super exciting. With emails that I've sent, I think everybody's on the same page with this. But our main goal here is to really give a sense of possibilities in college applications and to kind of give you some examples and some people behind the paper. And so with these awesome panelists, you get like a good diversity in responses and perspectives. And so hopefully this will be helpful for you. We'll talk about extracurriculars, essay topics, get a little bit maybe into different colleges and different programs and fields. So without further ado, I'm going to have each panelist introduce herself, and I will call on each one, but just a basic introduction, and maybe we can kick off with Angela.
Okay, so my name is Angela. I studied biomedical engineering at St. Louis University. That's where I did my undergrad. And then I did my master's also in biomedical engineering at the University of Navarra in Spain. And through that, I spent 1 year doing my master's thesis at Harvard Medical School. So I just got done with that about a month ago. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of my background.
Awesome. Mariana?
Hello, I'm Mariana. I'm going to be a junior at MIT, and I'm majoring in mechanical engineering and minoring in design.
Very cool. Samantha?
Hi, my name is Samantha. I'm going to be a sophomore at UC Berkeley next year, and I'm majoring in chemical engineering.
Awesome. Anaí?
I'm also a sophomore in UC Berkeley, and I'm also doing chemical engineering.
Great. How about Teresa?
I'm going to be a sophomore also, but at UCLA, I'm a neuroscience major, and I plan to go to medical school.
Awesome. And Shirley?
Hi, so I did my undergrad at UC Berkeley. I was a chemical biology, and I graduated last year, and currently I'm doing my PhD at MIT.
Awesome. And maybe we can do a quick round where each panelist lists like some of the other universities you applied to. So you mentioned your undergrad university, but maybe just some of the other colleges that you applied to, or the number of colleges that you applied to, and then list some examples. We can go backwards. How about Shirley? You want to kick us off?
Okay, so I'm from Canada, so I applied to schools in Canada and the States. I applied to 4 schools in Canada, like University of British Columbia, Toronto, Waterloo. Those are the famous ones. I got into all of them. And then I applied to about 10 schools in the States. I got in some Ivy Leagues and then like a few of the other ones, but I got into Berkeley, Smith, UC Davis, and I think one more, but I forgot. But like I applied to a lot. Yeah.
Cool. How about Teresa?
So I'm from Portland, Oregon, which is on the West Coast. So I mostly applied to a lot of like public universities on the West Coast, like in Washington and with the UC schools. I applied to like a few schools in the Midwest, like I think WashU in St. Louis, and Rice University. And then on the East Coast, I applied to Emory and Brown, but not really to any of the other Ivy Leagues. So yeah.
Sorry, cool. Anaí?
I'm from Texas, so I applied to some Texas schools, like the local university here, which is the University of Texas at El Paso. I also applied to UT Austin, to Texas A&M, and to Rice. And then since I was going to apply to Berkeley and all UCs use like the same application, I applied to UCLA, UC San Diego, and UC Berkeley. And then other schools I applied to were Notre Dame and MIT.
Cool. Samantha?
So I kind of applied to a lot of schools, but I probably shouldn't have done that many. But since I'm from California, I applied to almost all the UCs because I really wanted to go to a UC school. But I also applied to some out of state, like Georgia Tech and University of Minnesota. So.
Awesome. Mariana?
So I'm from Chicago, the Chicago area. So I applied to some in the Midwest, like Northwestern, University of Michigan, Notre Dame, University of Illinois. I applied to like 9 total, so I'll give some of them. And then MIT, obviously, and then Princeton, and over on the West Coast, Stanford and UCLA.
Awesome. Angela?
I'm trying to remember. I applied to, I think, like 8 schools, mostly in the Midwest, like obviously SLU, WashU, Northwestern, Georgia Tech, Purdue. I don't remember which other ones, and then the University of Nevada over in Spain for undergrad as well. So
Very cool. And just to add to that, so there is a common theory that it's good to apply to like a mix, so three different levels: your safety schools, your probably get in schools, and then your reach schools. Show of hands that everybody in the panel take that strategy. Yes, okay. Anybody want to comment on it? We don't have any dissenting views, but I could take one comment on it if anybody wanted to highlight anything about that.
I could jump in because one thing that I did consider when we say the 3 ranges, it's not just on kind of how high they are like academically, but also other things like cost. Basically, reach should be schools that would be either hard to get into or maybe harder to go because of money. So for me, it was a variety of factors that put my schools into each of the 3 categories.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so the next question is related to extracurriculars. So what you did in high school, any advice that you have for our high school members about extracurriculars, choosing activities, maybe highlighting different aspects of that in your application, anything related to extracurriculars. Anybody want to kick us off with that?
I can start, I guess. So I was really into music since like I was 6. So I joined a lot of like choirs and band in high school, and I was lucky that I was able to participate in many of like these festivals, which turned out to be like great experiences and like things I can write on a resume. And on the other hand, I knew I wanted to do STEM related in college, so I volunteered at a blood donation clinic. So I think those were my main passions, one out of just my pure like interest, the other one is because I wanted to do something that's similar in college. So yeah.
Cool. Teresa, did you want to comment on that?
Oh yes, I was very similar to Shirley. So I played the viola. I did orchestra, and I also did choir. But I also, like Shirley, I knew I wanted to do something in STEM. So I applied. There are like a lot of great programs that like will match you to like research in areas you're interested in, or like internships, particularly in STEM. So that's a great like resource, I guess, if you want to get involved but you don't know how to reach out.
Great.
My high school was like very keen on like doing a bunch of like volunteering and service work, and I think that definitely helped my college applications, because especially like during my senior year I went on a medical mission trip, which like I think for me specifically it definitely helped me realize that I really wanted to study biomedical engineering, and so that helped, I think, my application. And then also like SLU in particular is also a very like service oriented university, so that definitely got me like bonus points there.
For me, I went to a pretty small high school that focused more on the liberal arts, actually. So, in addition to things like music, I did some sports. I did a variety of things in high school, but they didn't have any opportunities for STEM. So, I definitely encouraged kind of summer opportunities during high school. And that's how I figured out I wanted to do mechanical, because I did an engineering camp at the University of Illinois, and other college STEM related activities throughout my summers. And then I was also involved in my student council. I was president my senior year, so that was a lot of fun. And I think definitely helped in my application showing that leadership, because they really look for that.
For me, going into high school, I actually wanted to study law when I would like in college, but I had always had an interest for science and math. So I decided to join robotics and do science for just for fun and because I liked it. And over my high school years, I found like my passion in engineering, and that changed my whole major. So yeah, you should explore things you're interested in, and maybe they can shape what you're going to study in the future.
Yeah, for me, like when I was going to high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do as well. So I just tried out a couple things. I ended up really liking robotics. So I also did that for a very long time and I stuck with it all through high school. I really liked it. But I also like tried other things. Like I also like joined newspaper for a year. Like I did like dance and stuff. So like just because you pick an activity that you like doesn't mean that should like limit you from trying out like new other things as well. So
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for that. Um, Heading over to college application essays, can you highlight maybe some of the things that you talked about in your essays? Any advice that you have for crafting those essays in general? Or maybe stories you've heard also of like your classmates, like good experiences, bad experience of essays.
I would definitely recommend, like, I read this book before writing my college apps. It's called Write Your Way In. I forget like the exact the author's name, but that's the title of the book. And it'll basically take you step by step through like how you should like go through the thinking process of like choosing your like essay topic for like the Common App or for like the Coalition app, because that can be really tricky, you know? So that's something I did, and it'll really show you how to like organize your ideas, and it won't like constrain your creativity but kind of bring it out. So I would really recommend that book.
I would recommend giving yourself plenty of time. And I know that's like one of the hardest things to do. And I tell people that I have younger siblings. My brother is about to be a freshman. And, you know, as much as I tell people, it still tends to be last minute, but as much as you can, give yourself time with these essays because it's helpful to have other people read them over. I think with my MIT essays, I spent the most time with those because I was really trying hard to get in there, especially. And it could definitely show in the quality in the end when I had other people read them over. And I got advice from someone with especially the smaller short answer type essays that every sentence really counts. Like every sentence should be in there for a reason because you're tight on word count. So I just tried to make sure that each of my essays showed something different about me and what made me unique, not necessarily what looks good on a resume, but just what makes you stand out. So for me in particular, MIT is actually my ninth school. So I talked a lot throughout all my applications about my different moves and how that helped me become more adaptable, how I had to take initiative in places. And I thought that was something a little more unique for me.
Yeah, like for me, I would highly recommend starting in the summer before your senior year, just because senior year is like pretty busy already, and it's just better to brainstorm in the summer. For me, like my Common App essay went through like so many drafts. I think I had like 7 drafts in all, and like to be honest, the drafts were very like different from each other. Like the ideas stayed the same, but again, like Mariana said, it's a lot about like the wording and how you really want to make every sentence count, especially with the word count. So I would recommend definitely starting early as well. And also in terms of like for me, like the UCs were like something I was like really shooting for. So in terms of how I structured that, like for the UC, basically how it works is you have 4 questions you answer, but you get to pick which ones. And so I also try to like pick different topics that would show different like viewpoints of who I was, so that it wouldn't be like repetitive or anything.
And also sometimes even though you're applying to a lot of different universities, maybe like the questions they ask are similar. So if you have like a good idea for one and you already talk good about it, like you can also use those ideas for other schools, but maybe don't necessarily like copy and paste because the prompts are a little bit different. But you can use that to help with your other essays. So you don't feel like, oh, I have to do 20 essays. Like no, you don't have to do 20 because sometimes they're more or less the same.
I guess I'll go. So I think it's very important to know who you are and what your strength is when you're trying to write these essays. So I would like, if you don't know how to start, I would just think of like, what are your strengths? What do you want to show like the committee members? And then for me, it was like, I always start with like a short story that kind of transitions to what's important. So I think that really helped me to like focus what I want to tell people about me that's not on my resumes. Yeah.
Yeah, I second what Shirley said. I also like moved around a lot, like as a kid, and that doesn't really show up on like the questionnaire or like the Common App or whatever. So I showcased that on my essay, and I think that yeah, like you have to show who you are, and whatever doesn't really show up in the application, like try to show that somehow in your essay.
Also, if I could jump in again with the activities, even though this isn't the essay portion, depending on the way the school sets up their application, because especially the non-Common App ones, they sometimes give you pretty good amount of space for the activities as well. And although those aren't necessarily essays, I would really take advantage of that space as well to show either leadership or something about that activity that shows something about you. So use those words wisely as well, even if it's just a few sentences. That way you don't have to repeat activities and essays as well and do what Angela said of using the essays to showcase something that might not be as much in your resume. So take advantage of the activity space.
Awesome. So I know when I give seminars about college applications, I'm always reluctant to answer the question of what did you write about, because you don't want people to like mimic that, right? You want it to be kind of like what Shirley says is, really illustrating who you are and what you have to offer. But I think sometimes it's a little bit of a disservice because you do need ideas and things to go on. So I don't know. I think now that we can aggregate all of these responses and there's enough diversity here, maybe if everybody can just give like a little bit of a sense of the topic they put, like for the maybe the main Common App essay or a couple different topics that they wrote about.
I'll start. Well, I wrote about my volunteer experience at the blood clinic because it was just so important to me because that inspired me to like continue in the STEM field. But besides that, my other one was Taekwondo because I practiced that for like a long time, so I was really into it. So that's something I wrote about. Yeah.
In terms of my Common App essay, I kind of like it wasn't very like just about like an experience I had. I think I focused more kind of on my identity, but I kind of factored in like not just like because like I did write about robotics as like one of the topics of it, but I actually like that wasn't like the main focus. Like the main focus was more like about how like the experiences I had and like also, like my family identity like kind of influenced who I was. So I think that was it's like a little different because for the UCs, I actually focused more on making it more of like resume type, like responses versus the Common App is really like more of an opportunity to like showcase your identity, I believe, or at least I think that's what my college counselor told me. But I tried to focus more on the Common App on like kind of shaping my identity more just because it is one essay that you're not like you don't have more space to like talk about like details of your experiences. Like it's more you kind of talk about who you it's a more of like a chance to talk about who you are versus like the UCs I was told is like kind of more experience kind of packed since it's just the apps are like structured differently. So that was kind of the topic for my Common App, but it might be different for other people. So
Mine was actually very similar to that, Samantha. I also wrote about like who I was, or like how, like because I moved around a lot, like Spain, United States, Brazil, and all of these like changes like shaped who I was in that time. And so I kind of wrote about how these like different cultures like shaped me into who I was at that moment. And I had to reread my Common App or my essay, but that was like more or less like what I wanted to portray is like, I don't know, like I'm this way because it's like a blessing and a curse and this and that because so I think, yeah, I had to reread it, but that's more or less how I went.
I'm with you, Angela. These things get foggier as time goes on. I remember I wrote about my grandma, but I don't remember too much more than that. Very cool. All right, who else?
I also wrote about my moves, like I mentioned earlier, but I took it a slightly different way than Angela did. I decided to talk about how I took initiative in each of the new places I moved to. So it was showing a little bit about who I was, but kind of how I had to like meet new people quickly, or if there was a program in a school I was moving to that didn't exist, but I had it in the previous one, how I like tried to make that happen, or something like that, where I was trying to show my adaptability and initiative. But like I said before, a lot of the other applications outside of the Common App that I was doing did have more of those short answer type essays. So other topics I touched on was my Hispanic background and actually kind of how a lot of so I'm from Venezuela originally, and how a lot of my Venezuelan family friends are actually engineers. So I talked about growing up, how I heard about their jobs and what they did in their family life, and that inspired me to be an engineer. I talked about music and some others. And yeah, I think those were the main ones that I remember.
So like when I was writing mine, like I at first felt really worried because I've never had anything like big or exciting or moved around, like I felt like my life was kind of boring and I didn't have anything super tragic or super exciting to write about. And the thing is that you don't need that to write a good essay because so I basically wrote my Common App essay about like how I didn't get into an orchestra, like I didn't like do that well in my audition, and I used that simple failure and like just wrote a whole essay about how that helped me grow like as a musician and as a student in like different aspects. And it wasn't like a super like big deal, but I feel like the way I wrote it like made it seem like important, so I think that something you should keep in mind, like people have said, take a lot of time to like think about it, and it doesn't have to be a big deal, but the way you write it is really important.
Yeah, me too. Like Teresa said, I also thought, oh, my life is kind of boring. What do they want to know about me? But then I wrote about like my identity, and mine was like an extended metaphor of a family tradition that we have, which is making tamales. And I incorporated that, how that's engineering, how it molds me to who I am, about like my Mexican roots and how I like everything that has shaped me in my life. And then I made something simple, an extended metaphor, which showed who I really was.
Awesome. This has been super great. So I think we're going to take a little bit of a pause here and take Q&A from the audience related to college apps in particular, because the other part that we wanted to talk about is a little bit more about the undergrad experience and about like your particular university, also in terms of applying there and your school and what you recommend. But then a little bit more particular as well about your university and your major particular program. We had a couple questions related to that as well. But I'll first ask some questions related to the college applications. And so some of them are related to, having to write a new essay for each one, but I think Anaí touched on this a little bit, right? That there can be some recycling between schools that you're applying to with your essays. Many schools take the Common App, and that's really helpful. You get a lot of like legwork, get a lot of mileage out of those essays. And then the other things you can kind of like fine tune depending on what's required. Some schools are more unique than others, right? I think the UC system is a pretty unique one, right? Our UC people out there can testify to that. So, but there can be some recycling, which is good. There are a couple of questions related to coursework as well in your applications. And there's a question related to APs and honors classes. And so maybe I can open this up to the panelists if they want to comment on course load and the balance there, how helpful you think that was for your application.
So like at my I went to a very competitive public high school where some people would take like 6 APs each school year. Like it just and like the valedictorian of my class, he took 19 APs in high school. So it was just like insane. But the thing is, I don't think that having like a ton of AP classes versus someone who took maybe like less would make you much more competitive. I think it's more about quality over quantity. So like if you can take like, you know, 3 AP classes and get A's in all of them and like 5s on the exam versus taking 6 and like not doing that well, I think that would show that you're a much better student. Also, if you choose to take like STEM APs, if you're going into STEM, that, or like, you know, non-STEM, if you're going into that field, I think that's another good thing. So yeah.
With my experience, it also really depends on the school and the college you're applying to, and then the high school you went to. So for me, I think it was less about the number of APs I took and more about, well, I did go to multiple different high schools, but trying to take the hardest classes that I could. So in one of the high schools I went to, they just offered less. I could only take, for example, in the sciences, they only had AP Calc and AP Chem, and that was it. I didn't have AP Computer Science. I didn't have AP Bio. So it's more about taking the hardest you can. And if you can, take also a class, you know, either in a community college or outside if you want to. That's another option. But they like just seeing that you're trying hard to take the hardest ones you can. And then also, depending on the college, some colleges will take more of that AP credit. So I think it'll also just help you getting out of certain classes or helping you get into those. That tends to be kind of state schools. I know it helped me a lot with the University of Illinois. But some of the bigger schools, yeah, it was less about, they might not take the credit even, and it's not about the number of APs, but just about how hard you're trying and choosing classes, like Teresa said, that you do well in. So the hardest classes you can take.
Yeah, I agree with Mariana because also in my high school, they didn't offer a lot of hard classes or like AP classes, but they offered IB classes, which are also very hard. But they didn't really calculate it into your GPA. So if you were taking a regular class and you did very good, but if you're taking like an IB class and it's harder, it's like they were the same level. So a lot of people chose to take regular classes so their GPA could be very good and it looks good on your resume. However, when you're trying to get into the universities, they're not really seeing, oh, was your GPA? Well, they do look at your GPA, but most importantly, they look if you challenged yourself, if you try to make the most with the opportunities you were given. So for me, I took IB and I took all my classes were advanced, but it was only a few people in my high school that were taking those classes. So in terms of rank and GPA, it was very competitive when you're competing with someone that didn't take those classes. But when I applied to the universities, it looked very good because given in my high school that we didn't have that many opportunities to like take hard classes, if you did take harder classes, well, it showed that you were really committed to your education and that you really just wanted to learn rather than get the best grades or be number one.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think it also really helps in the transition to like the college classes, like in actual college, like the course, like the amount of like course or studying that you have to do. I think it's like the AP classes that I took in high school. Some of them I had to like repeat in college because the credits didn't transfer or I didn't take the AP exam. And I like aced those classes because I already knew like I don't want to say everything, but like it was a lot easier for me to get good grades later on.
So I did my high school in Canada, so that they don't really have like a structured AP systems for Canadian like colleges. So I took like 3 because I wanted to apply to American colleges, but like my school only offered AP Calc, so like I studied those on my own. But I think what I realized when I got into Berkeley was that like college class was so much harder than AP that for me like it helped me to like for AP math, like it was easier, but like it was still very challenging. So I think it's more about just challenging yourself in high school, and then once you transition to college, they're like obviously harder than AP classes. So I think that's something that I only realized once I'm in college.
Yeah, I also agree because I think AP, so for me, like I know people who did try to take like all the honors and AP classes like at my school, but personally I kind of sought more of a balanced like schedule just because I already had a lot going on with like robotics and things like that. So I really wanted to manage my time well. And honestly, like I think just as long as you show your passion in the classes you're doing, kind of what NIE said, and show that you want to really learn, and you're not just doing it because it looks good for college. I think that's like the key point. But one thing I will say is that it's really nice when you get to college to get to transfer over your AP credit and like be able to like skip taking like certain classes. Like for example, English. Like I didn't take AP English, but I kind of wish I had because I had to take English first semester and it was actually pretty hard. So if you can, like if it's something that interests you, then I would recommend just going for it. But obviously, if it's not something like you want to do, then like don't just do it because it looks good.
Very cool. Awesome. So I think this also brings up, I mean, a lot about AP scores as well, and I think it's worth clarifying. Part of what we talk about with APs are like exemplifying academic rigor, right? That you're really trying to take advantage of what your school has to offer and seeking out broader opportunities to complement that when it's necessary. um, the other aspect of this are the actual scores that you get, right? So one thing is, okay, you want to take this course for your betterment and for academic rigor, and then you want to try to get good grades in those classes. But the other aspect is the AP score, right? That then this will be to get college credit, and that's highly dependent on the university, what they will accept as college credit, what they won't. There can be a lot of variety in this, okay? So there's some questions related to AP scores, but I think it's pretty simple to clarify for that it's not so much do you want to send it or not. All of your scores are going to be logged on your report by the College Board, and then that's going to get sent to your school. And whatever you can get credit for, you will get credit for. Sometimes you end up giving up that credit if you want to take a class for some other reason, maybe in order to like prepare for the next one that seems like it's going to be much harder or something like this. But that'll kind of be like an automatic kind of process. Okay, so unless anybody has something to add to that, related to essays, there's also questions related to, showing how unique you are, which I think we've talked a good, we've had a good perspective on that we can be discussing, things that you've done, things you've accomplished, but often you feel like, as a high school student, you don't have a lot to put for that, and highlighting kind of what makes you you is a great way to handle that. So I'm not sure if anybody has anything else to add about, kind of how you discovered what are some of those interesting things about you, or unique aspects, kind of maybe in that process of discovery, if there's anything that was helpful for that, for any of you.
Honestly, I just kind of like when I was trying to write it, like it was summer and I was like thinking about it. And honestly, I didn't really know what to like when I first like opened my document to like start writing like the first word of my essay. Like I like didn't know what to say. I was like, I really don't know what to say about myself. So I think what I did that was pretty helpful for me is I just like made a bullet point list. Like I didn't even start writing the essay yet. Like I just started writing like random things I knew about myself. And like I would like just write like maybe like about like oh like where I come from or like what I do at school, what I like to do. And then after I did that and I looked at it, I was like, like are there like any like compelling stories I can tell about like these different details of my life that would like show who I am? And I think that brainstorming process was really key for me because I was able to really structure my essay based off of that. Like it's better to like write things down that aren't like fully formed and then like look at it like as a big picture and then try to put it all together versus just like try to just start from like no like, I mean you can start from nowhere too. It honestly depends on like your writing process, I think, but at least for me it was better for me to like write stuff down and like visualize like, oh, like I can put this detail like here or like talk about this story versus like because for me I just started like kind of jumbled, like I didn't really know what to write about, so that helped me a lot.
I guess sort of just covering the idea of unique. I think we are all unique in our own experiences. So they don't have to be like huge, I don't know, like fantastic, crazy experience. But it's just more about maybe even like a tiny detail about you that just like that you think is like special, right? So I think it's important to know that it doesn't have to be big.
And also to bounce off of that, when we say unique, it's usually not necessarily the experience that's unique, but you are unique as a person. Like all of us are unique. So using either the experiences or something else in your essay to show something about you. So it's more about like the quality or a characteristic as well. It's a mix of the two. So it is very hard to come up with an experience that's unique. I think that's not necessarily what's expected, although it can happen. But if you haven't done something unique necessarily, you as a person are unique. So how can you showcase some aspect of yourself through whatever experiences you have?
Awesome. All right. So in the interest of time, we're going to jump to the undergraduate experience. So what do you like about your university and or what do you like about your major? Any advice about that particular university, that major? There's already some good follow-up questions related to this, but we'll take any takers who want to comment on that in general.
I can start, I guess. So just a reminder, I would go to MIT and I absolutely love it there. I love talking about college. I think the big thing for me was the hands-on and collaboration there. They really push not just, so we're taking a lot of technical theory-based classes, but then we apply it right away in projects. So I'm a mechanical engineer, and pretty much every semester there's one kind of major project type class that I take, which is really fun for me. And there's always so many people, since it's majority STEM people, what they're majoring in is STEM, there's always people to work with. So like I said, very collaborative. And even though the homework there can be really challenging, you know, everyone there is really supportive and wants to help you thrive. So it's really fun. And another big thing is passion. So not just with academics, but in the extracurriculars I do a variety of things, including dance. I'm a part of the Catholic community. I'm a part of a Hispanic engineers kind of community. And in all of them, because everyone is so passionate about what they do and everyone at MIT is pretty busy, so what they spend time in, they care a lot about. It really shows because then they're either really good at it, for example, in the dance, people are really talented, or just really care about the group and care about the people in it because they're spending their time there for a reason. So those are just some of the things I love about MIT.
I could talk a little bit about Berkeley. I actually had some qualms about going to Berkeley at first, just because I had heard a lot of rumors. Just because there are many rumors, like for example, that the classes are super big and that everyone's very like cutthroat and competitive. And honestly, like when I got there, the rumors, at least for me, like they're not true. I think it depends on like where, like what you're majoring in, like what, like because at Berkeley there's like colleges, so like there's different kind of like subsets of the university. So for me, I'm in the College of Chemistry, and like I really like it there just because it's a lot smaller. I think it's only like 1,000 people like in all in terms of undergrads, and everyone really is like close knit. I think just because in terms of my major, a lot of us have to take like the same classes. Like and I have been like in like a ton of classes together, and like it's really collaborative as well. It's really fun because like we're kind of in this like small like courtyard of buildings that we take since we have a lot of STEM classes. We're just kind of in the same buildings, so like you see everybody around every day. And it's just I really like the community there. That part is like probably one of my favorite things about Berkeley. So just because a big university doesn't necessarily mean that you will be able to like form like meaningful connections. I think it just depends on like going out and like seeking those communities. Like for me, like college of chemistry is already like established, but like in terms of like clubs and things like that, that's also how you can find kind of like who you want to like. You can find like a tribe kind of. So yeah.
Yeah, so kind of similar to Samantha. So I go to UCLA, which is like very similar to Berkeley. They're both really large public schools. And I'm pre-med, and at UCLA there are a ton of pre-meds, a ton of life science majors. So I was really nervous about about the competition. But Mariana and Samantha mentioned, a lot of they're really smart kids, but they're also like really sweet. They like really like working together, because honestly I feel like that's when you learn the most. And I really haven't met anyone who's really like cutthroat or like super competitive. um and then also about like finding your people, like during the first like month of college, everyone is like, experiencing homesickness. Everyone wants to meet friends. So like don't be afraid to put yourself out there and say hi to everyone and just be like extra friendly. And that's kind of hard for me because I'm kind of an introverted person. But if you just make a little bit of an effort, it'll go a long way, because a lot of like people won't maybe tell you, but like they really want you to reach out to them. So yeah.
Okay, so I'm also College of Chemistry at Berkeley, a different major. So very similar experiences. My major was like 40 people. I met them the first day, and then we still met, like we took the same class until we all graduated. So obviously I have really close friends. We established really good bonds, and we survived through classes. So that's very nice. But I've taken classes that's like not chemistry, and that's like very cutthroat. So I think it might just depends on who you end up meeting and your circumstance. But overall, I think I overpacked myself in college, so I had a kind of a tough time. But I think I did learn a lot out of that. So
My university, so St. Louis University or SLU, is like a more small to medium-sized private Catholic university, and you could definitely tell that it was like a private Catholic university. Just like in the people, like the majority of the people that went there. So I don't know. I really enjoyed my college experience, but it also like it's your college experience is what you make of it. Like it's different for everyone, and it like really depends on like the activities that you like get involved in, or clubs that you're a part of, or major. But yeah, what I liked about SLU was that you had to take a bunch of different classes that were not like in your major. So I had like a bunch of classes with like pre-med people, or like history people, like we had to take like theology and philosophy. So I liked having more of that, like more broad education. I think that really helped me also, like not just like be like, okay, engineering. It's like, okay, life is more about there's more things in life than just engineering. And like college is like a time for you to like learn and experience things and talk to different people. And so I think it's, your college experience is what you make of it. So you have to like make an effort to do with it what you want to do with it. So yeah.
So I also go to Berkeley College of Chemistry, both like Shirley and Samantha. And how Mariana was saying about MIT, I feel that the same is about Berkeley, that there's a lot of passionate people, and it's both the professors and the students. So it also makes you very interested in what you're learning and just wants you to learn more. Wants makes you want to learn more. There's also a lot of research opportunities and a lot of opportunities in general, but also outside of like the College of Chemistry. I feel like Berkeley is very diverse. So you're gonna find people from a lot of different places, and you'll be introduced to a lot of different cultures, which I think, coming from like a 99% Hispanic city, was very cool for me. And then you'll also find a lot of people that are interested in what you like aside from STEM. And there's a lot of clubs, so you can also join them. And how Angela was saying, learn about other things, because in college it's really just about learning and growing as a person. So you're going there for a major, but you have to use the opportunities to learn about so much more and just to help yourself grow.
Awesome. So I'm going to go through a few questions that maybe we can just have a couple people answer. But first, if anybody has experienced like having a tough decision in your colleges, kind of what were the pros and cons? Like, what was the ultimate reason why you chose the college that you did? Did anybody have that particular experience?
So I got into, well, I guess my like one of the biggest factors for me, because I applied to universities that like all had the major that I wanted to study, but the biggest factor for me was like the scholarship that I got, and it like by far like the biggest amount, like with a huge difference was SLU, and so it's really hard to say no to that when you get offered like a big scholarship. So
that's a great point. College debt is really a burden.
yeah.
It's a big factor. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it like in my particular situation, like it was a big and important factor. So yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else want to comment on that? Okay, awesome. All right, so any other advice? So some people commented a little bit on this already in terms of getting your feet wet in college. But if anybody has other suggestions for that transition into college freshman year, how to manage time, how to ask for help, how to ease in that transition.
All right, I have very strong relationship. So basically, I think for me, learning time management is so important because I think in high school for me it was very easy. Like maybe like I'm saying too good, but like it was easy to get A's. I never have to like time manage to actually do well. But I think in college, so I was expecting, oh, I'll get A's, like just take every class I want, and then I overpack myself, and that was horrible. So don't overtake classes. Like take fewer, especially first semester. Learn to time manage, and then like take more or do whatever you want. Like, don't try to overpack the first semester. That's just no. And also, grades are not number one in college. That's what I think the toughest lesson. Grades are not number one. Just have a good life. I know I'm like really like emotional, but I think I suffer so much because of that. Yeah.
For me, this kind of goes with the collaboration aspect. Make a friend or two in all of your classes. That is what saved me. I could not get through any of my classes on my own, except for maybe some of my more humanities where I'm like writing essays and I don't really collaborate with people on that, but especially with the STEM, have a PSET buddy, PSETs or whatever. That's what we call them, PSET buddies. But yeah, I just had friends in all my classes. And even this past semester when it went virtual, which was really hard with some of my classes, I just kept those same friends and we continued PSETting together. And that is what got me through the end of the semester. So that helped a lot. And then I think I want to second again that grades aren't number one, because having a balanced life in college helps you also do better in your classes, because I think doing things that I enjoyed and things with friends on the side that helped me take breaks and have fun also just gave me more energy for the classes themselves. It helped me stay motivated. And then lastly, I'd say you're going to have to kind of relearn how to study for different types of classes, because your college classes will be very different than your high school classes. So I found with different kinds of classes, I study for them or work toward them in a different way. Because, for example, project type classes don't have as many exams versus exam heavy classes I'm going to study for more similar to high school. So just take your time to learn how to study for each of your classes.
Awesome. So there's a question related to applying to colleges that have your major, don't have your major. And in the interest of time, I'll comment really briefly that most people change their major when they get to college. And so I think that it's prudent to look at the overall college and not just select for one particular major. If you have a really strong interest, maybe it's wise that that be included or at least be possible in some way through the college that you are going to choose, but that it's definitely not the only factor, not the most important factor. But if anybody else wants to comment on that, or the last question that we'll get to, which is the hardest class that you took in college, and if that class had you discouraged about your major. So maybe two people can give their input on that as well.
Okay, I'll go. The hardest class was my first semester, chemistry, just because it was very different than high school and I had to study a lot more. And it didn't really make me question like if I wanted to do chemical engineering, but it did make me question if going to that university was the best option for me. Because for me, I had gotten like better scholarship opportunities in other universities, and well, I thought, oh, they're gonna be easy and I have more money. But for me, I was like, no, I want to go to Berkeley because that was my number one option. And I was proud of myself for getting there. So I told myself, no, you're gonna go there. But after struggling with that class, I was like, was I really meant to be here? Maybe they messed up on my application, or like I started to doubt myself a lot. But the second semester, I had to take chemistry again because it's like chemistry one and then the second part of it. And I made a group of friends, and then we had study groups, and how everyone was saying how study groups really help you, and having a friend in that class really helps you. So it was a very big difference from my first semester to my second semester. So then I realized, okay, maybe it wasn't me or my knowledge, it was just the way I was learning and the way I was studying. So then once I changed that, I started to be more positive and I started to do better in school.
I remember the hardest class that I took was computing, just because like coding was never and is still not my thing, and it was like one of the classes that like we had to take, and I just like could not get it. Like I would study so hard, and it's fine. Like in engineering or in STEM, like there's fields within your major that you can like focus on. So like I knew that like the software part of biomedical engineering was not my thing. So I, started doing more of like tissue stuff and more biological stuff, and I ended up loving it. So yeah.
And one thing I want to add really quick is that when you have that period where you get to the hardest class, it happened to me last semester, you're not alone either. So you're going to realize that a lot of other people are in the same boat as you. So it doesn't mean the major's not right for you. Like Angela said, it could be the area. So yeah, don't get discouraged.